Hi everybody, Nate from The Kraemer Life, and we got Katie, also from The Kraemer Life, behind the camera. A few days ago, we processed our 2 pigs and 1 sheep. We didn't do any recording during the process, but we did want to walk through what our process was after we were done with everything. I think what we need to do is just start where we did the dispatch, and we'll kind of work our way up through the line that we created. So this is where we did the dispatch, and first thing we did was we turned off the fence, and then we gave the pigs just some milk in their feeding bowls, and that when they're drinking, their heads stay still, it stays looking down, and it gives you a nice clean target that doesn't move, and so you can do a really quick and painless dispatch, and that's what happened with this. Dispatch method was just a single shot to the head with a 9mm handgun with a hollow point, and it went really quick. After the pig was dispatched, we lowered this fence here and we dragged it out to this little area here. And we had borrowed our neighbor's tractor, so we were able to bring the tractor up, hang it with a gambrel and do the weighing. And then we brought it over to the device that I created over here to hang it, and we did the skinning. So let's walk over there. My initial thought was we were gonna do 2 pigs at the same time, and we decided early on that we were just going to do 1 pig at a time. And so I really didn't need to build this because I could have just used the tractor to lift the 1 pig that we were working on at a time. But I built this a day before we started, so I'll walk through, and we did end up using this and it worked really well. Post number 1 is just the trunk of this red leaf maple, and then the other is just 2 2x4s stuck together or screwed together. And then I did a 2x8 at the top, and I secured both sides with construction lag screws for being able to hold a bunch of weight. It turned out that the pigs were 500 and 600 pounds, so they were very large and very heavy. The way that we lifted it was using a little pulley that we bought, or a winch that we got from Weber, one of our favorite suppliers. So this is actually meant to pull boats onto their trailer, but it actually worked pretty well for lifting as well. This thing can actually do, I think it's like 1,800 pounds. So it had no problem lifting it. Bolted it to the side here, and it can go both up and down. And so we used pulleys. We have 1 pulley at the top up there and a 2nd pulley over here. And so we just lowered the gambrel, had the gambrel attached to this, lowered the gambrel, put it into the legs of the pigs when the tractor was right here, and then just lifted it up as the tractor lowered the bucket, and the pig hung here. So this is where we did the skinning and the evisceration, or the gut removal. We decided not to do the scald and scrape method. The pigs, were too big. We couldn't fit them into a 50-gallon barrel, and they're really, really hairy, and that would have taken a long time because they are Mangalitsa pigs. So we ended up just doing the skinning method, and the method of skinning that we chose to do was what we call the banana peel method. This is where you actually take a hook blade utility knife, one that you would use for a carpet, these blades here, and these are perfect depth to go into the skin, and you make basically from the top all the way down to the bottom, you just do straight lines, do about a 1-inch thick strip, and you can just pull it directly off, and it leaves the fat in a very good condition. It's almost really smooth, and it doesn't have a bunch of cut marks because this doesn't pierce into the fat, it just cuts through the skin. So that worked out really well. We skinned the pig that way, and then we did the evisceration. Some of the parts of the evisceration were boiled down and fed to chickens, and other parts are going into our compost pile to make some beautiful compost. So nothing went to waste. After it was skinned, eviscerated, and we cut the carcass in half, we put the carcass into heavy-duty construction trash bags, covered them really good, and then put them in the bucket of the tractor and took them up to a freezer that I built, which I'll show you. But I also want to talk about how we skinned and eviscerated the sheep. So another thought that I had was that we were gonna do 2 pigs at the same time and a sheep at the same time if everybody was comfortable, but again, we just decided to do one at a time. So I wanted to have a third setup available, and I reached out to our friends at Vever. So I asked to try out this deer mount. This is for hunters that go out and hunt deer and they process them out in the field. It actually attaches to your tow hitch on the back of the truck, and this lawnmower actually has that size tow hitch available. So we just connected it to the lawnmower here, and after we had dispatched the sheep, we then hung the sheep from this and pulled it up with the winch system that it has, and hung the sheep, and we did the skinning and the gutting on this. This worked really well, but there is one flaw in this. It's supposed to hold about 400 pounds. There's one design flaw in this that would make it so I wouldn't quite recommend it, and that is where it connects, where this piece connects, it can turn, which is great. You can position it however you want, but the way that it connects, so this part here, where this connects onto the frame, it's not welded very well, and so when you put a lot of force into it, you can see it's already kind of bent. And so unfortunately, this is not going to be something we're going to use anymore. It was it's a nice idea, but a little bit of a design flaw, so wouldn't quite recommend that. But we got it to work. It worked for what we needed, but kind of a one-time use. Let's go head up to the cooler that I built so I can show you how we stored the meat overnight before we did the butchering and the packaging and the freezing the day after. The forecast was that it was going to rain on the day that we were going to be butchering or cutting the meat and packaging. So initially I thought all the operations were going to be here under the carport. Turned out to be the perfect day, and there was no rain, so didn't need to be under the carport. But anyway, here we are. One of the things that we wanted to be able to do was ensure that the meat stayed really cold and actually hardened up overnight, so making the butchering process a lot easier. Cutting through cold meat is a lot easier than cutting through warm meat. And the temperatures for the evening weren't going to go down low enough to provide that naturally. So what we ended up doing was building this giant cooler. I might have made it a little bit bigger than I needed, but it actually worked out really well for us. So it is 8 feet long, 4 feet tall, and about 4 feet wide. And what I ended up doing was taking 3/4 inch plywood that I actually just took out from the floor of the house and a 2x4 framing, and I lined inside with 2 of these 1-inch foam boards here for an R10 insulation on the inside. And then for the top, all I did was just put a one on the top and weight it down with a heavy board. So inside, I'll move this out of the way here. So then we lined everything with some heavy, I think this is like 10 mil plastic that I had available. And we stuffed it full of 40 bags of ice. So that way we could keep the carcasses really cold. And that actually ended up working really well. So the carcasses were covered with this heavy duty trash bag here. And we just laid them down flat, one on top of the other, and put ice both underneath and on top of them, and then put the foam board insulation on top of it, and then close the whole thing up with this foam board and let it sit overnight for us to process. And then we continued using this cooler, and we're still using this cooler for all of the parts that we cut, like our lard and our bones and excess grind that we're going to use for the animals. We keep it in here, keeping it out of our freezer. And even when you open this thing now, you can feel how cold it is. As we got to day 2, since the weather was going to cooperate with us, we went ahead and decided instead of setting up our tables inside and under the carport, we would set up our tables out here. And we did a couple different stations. We had where we were going to break down and process the meat. We had right here where we had these totes set up,
And the totes were to separate the different types of meat, so the different cuts. So if it was, you know, hams or roasts or bacon, or if it was leaf lard, or if it was regular fat, we had it all kind of separated out. And then this station over here, we had set up where we would do the packaging. So we had the saran wrap, the butcher paper, and we were marking it all for the freezer. And then we would then take it down to the freezer as soon as we'd fill up a tote. So we just kept kind of like an assembly line. We had another station over here, and this station was where we had all of the extra knives, the saws, the tools. We had a nice little, almost like a sink, soap and water set up here. And then towards the end of the day, this is where we actually processed the lamb over here, because we didn't want to mix the pork and the lamb together. We wanted to make sure all the tools were separate. We also had a stock pot set up with hot, warm water because it was very cold. And it wasn't this exact one. It was actually a different one. Because we had this going with soapy warm water, we were able to keep everything clean and use it just by getting water, dipping and getting water out of there and pouring it into the different totes with soapy water.
Or washing your hands and
or
warming
your hands up. It was a chilly day, which was really good. It's really important that the meat stays cold, so that was very helpful for us. And we were able to process both pigs in the entirety as well as the entire sheep. We did have a couple totes left that had grind, and this is what we've been working on since the second day of processing, is getting our grinder out and working through and getting all the grind packaged up. Nate and I did all of that, and I seasoned some of it, so some of it's ready to go with chili, with taco meat, with sausage, and some of it's just plain. And then we also have been working on getting all of the lard. We're working on getting the lard cut up so that we can start rendering it down. And the other thing that we're working on, the first time we're doing it this year with these pigs, is we kept the hams whole. And the first ham weighed 28 pounds. And we've been salting it. So it's in the refrigerator starting that salting curing process. And we've actually got two of them. We're gonna do them two different ways. One is just salt and one is a rub with brown sugar, paprika, red pepper, salt, and pepper. So we're excited to try those, but that is going to be probably about 8 to 12 months, if not 18 months down the road.
One of the things that was important to Katie and I is honoring the complete pig. So we had the two pigs for almost 2 years, and we gave them the best life that they possibly could have. And we wanted to make sure that no part was wasted. And so this was our first time using all the parts from the pigs, including stuff from the head and the trotters and the legs and everything. So I took my time to take all the skin off of the trotters and be able to either put it in the smoker and smoke it for dog bones, or put it into hot water and make some bone broth out of it. For the heads, we kept the ears and we'll smoke those for the dogs. We got the cheek meat out and some other really good meat from the head out, and then put the rest of the head and all of the bones into a 50-gallon barrel, which I'll show you right over here actually. So this morning I filled up this 50-gallon barrel about halfway full of water and heated the water to about 170, and I filled it all up with a bunch of bones, the head, and any remaining parts that had some meat on it. And we're making both some really good broth, but also some nice cooked meat that we can scrape off the bones and feed to the chickens. Once the bones are cleaned by the chickens, really, we can take the bones, we can mash them up and make bone meal out of it and use it for our garden. So it's really important for us that we use as much as possible from the pig and honoring its life that way. Anything that we couldn't use either for feeding the dogs, the chickens, ourselves, or making into like the bone meal, like the skin and stuff like that, that all is going to go into a hot compost and break down and make really good compost for us.
Well, we didn't plan on sharing the entire process. We just didn't want to make that type of video. We did want to share with you kind of our lessons learned and how we walked through the process this time. because we did learn a lot from processing pigs 2 years ago on property. And some of those big lessons learned were really the temperature is critical. And so that's why we waited until February, and then also why Nate built such a large cooler to make sure that we had a place to keep the meat fresh and safe. Not safe. Fresh and cold.
Yeah.
When Nate and I decided we wanted to start homesteading, one of the biggest things was to know where our food comes from and to know how it was raised, you know, what was given to it, both for vegetables and for animals. And so we feel really confident that the pigs and the sheep had a really good life with us. They were fed well, treated well, and did not suffer in the end.
Yeah, and I know it's kind of faux pas in some people's minds to name your food, but for us, it allowed us to love them even more and really have a good, strong connection with them and treat them very, very well. And so for both of us, knowing that they were treated with 100% respect, they had only one bad day, they didn't even know that they had the bad day, was really important to us.
So thank you for coming along with us. We hope you learned something from our experiences, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yep.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.